Hello and welcome to the next episode of Opera Up Closer. I am the interviewee or the main host, Abby. I'm the trainee producer at Opera Up Closer, as we know already. I'm here today with Rob and Simon, who we've worked with previously and doing costume designs and bits and pieces. Would you be able to explain a little bit about yourself and like talk about, what sort of things that you've been doing and what sort of things that you love to do in that sort of general sense?
Definitely. Yeah, thank you for having me. I am a costume designer. I'm a costume designer maker. I use a sort of dash in between because most of my work at the moment I design and make, and that is a big part of my process as well. Is that I design in a way that I know how to make it, and oftentimes I also sort of start with processes or certain techniques, and then have that inform my design. And I also work as a supervisor, costume supervisor, and buyer, and assistant, dresser. Kind of everything. Throw it my way, I'll give it a go.
Oh,
Basically,
that's so
where
cool. I
I'm at.
love that. No, I was gonna say with that as well. So with like Maker, it's like if has there been points do you think before where like because I know that like there's like your work that I've seen anyway for myself, it's like so abstract and so beautiful, and there's so many like you really like I can tell you really think about like the tiny little details of it. Do you think that like have you done stuff before that's like very like structures and stuff like that? Because I know that like I've seen ones before that are very much like you've sort of almost like constructing this piece and like building it rather than like actually and there's like so many details that like actually go into costume making and stuff.
Definitely. I mean, I love working with kind of found materials. That was something I did mostly in my degree. Is for my final kind of costume degree. I made this big like metal conical structure. It was part of the story that was all about kind of an experience of crisis and living in a time of crisis, and trying to both escape and kind of embrace it at the same time. So there was this big metal thing that I built from scrap metals, and that was a super fun process to go through because I'd never done any metal work or anything like that before, and we had fantastic resources at the university, and so yeah, I used kind of scrap aluminium to construct this big cone thing that was super heavy, and I felt a little bit bad for my performer because when we shot the short film that I did, it was kind of the last scenes that we were doing was once the sun had gone down because we filmed at sunset and the sun had gone down, and we were shooting her in this big heavy metal thing, and it had been cold, it had been raining, and yeah, I felt quite bad. She was such a trooper.
Oh,
But no,
bless.
that was a fantastic build. That was super fun to make, definitely.
It's, I think a lot of people don't really take into consideration with it as well, because especially like whilst you're building it as well, like the sort of different aspects that go into it. Because I think a lot of people don't really realize with stuff like that as well as the fact of how heavy it's going to be. It's very much like a last minute process thought of, oh my goodness, this is so extremely heavy, and it's like this person's got to carry this around. It's just like, I mean, I've seen it before in like shows and stuff like that where they've been like constructing these big like headpieces, and then it's literally they put it on the person's head and they're like, oh my god, she can't hold it up, like her head up straight with it, and it's just a bit mental. But yeah, no, that sounds so cool. I was gonna say, with university and stuff like that, prior to like taking, I'm assuming that you took costume design or textiles in like university. What sort of made you want to get into costume design industry? Is it something that you always wanted to do, or do you think it's like something that you picked up along the way? Like what sort of what inspired you to go into this industry?
It's really somewhere in the middle. So I think I was always a very creative child. I was always drawing, and I think the drawing came first. Is sort of shapes and colors and those kinds of things, and then I was at the same time I was always really fascinated just with clothing and with kind of bodies, and and the way that we sort of disguise and reveal bodies in certain ways. that sounds really intellectual, and of course, when you were like a 6-year-old, that's not what you're thinking. But I think subconsciously,
Yeah.
that's kind of what that was just trying to understand, like, somewhere there's so much identity in clothing, and there's so much, I don't know, something so personal that I was really, really drawn to understanding and exploring. And there were these, I don't know if you, so I grew up in Germany. I don't know if you had these in the UK as well, but we had, when I was like 10, we had these kind of top model sketchbook
Yes, I had
things.
one myself.
Oh
Yeah,
my god,
they were
so
literally
fun!
the best. They were so
Yeah. So that is literally what got me into designing
good.
clothes. Was a classmate brought one of those books in one day, and I was like, "This is so fun." I
It's
mean,
the ones that
the
came with the
bodies.
stickers as well, so you could add like the little accessories with also drawing it
Yes,
on. It was so fun.
loved. So yeah, so I thought I was gonna be a fashion designer when I was like 12. I decided that's what I'm doing,
Mm.
and I kind of just stuck with it. And then yeah, my granny is a trained seamstress, and so she said, well, if you're going to be a fashion designer, then you're going to have to know how to sew,
Mm.
which so correct. I think you
Mm.
have, in order, well, no shade to anyone who is a designer who doesn't have the technical training in making, but I feel like people who know how to construct garments
Mm.
have much more refined and detailed understanding of what
Yeah,
clothes can
definitely.
be, and they'll also just be able to manage kind of workshops and assistants, I think, in a more precise way, which that's a whole like structural thing that we can get into later. But yeah, and then so I was always wanted to be a fashion designer, and then when I went, I finished school at 18, and then in Germany there's this thing called Freiwilliges Soziales Jahr, which is like a year of volunteering, basically, that a lot of people do.
Mm-hmm.
And you go into cultural, like educational institutions, and you sort of volunteer. So you work there for a year, and it's very guided. It's very much about sort of working out what it is that you want to do, and what you want to get into, and getting some work experience, but also using that year of doing something,
Mm-hmm.
being somewhere outside of an educational institution, and just developing. And I went to, so I'm from Bochum in Germany, and I went to the Schauspielhaus Bochum, which is a somewhat sort of renowned medium scale theatre, and worked in the costume department there. And that was when I decided this is everything I want to do, which is like crazy visuals and like clothes that are so artistic and conceptual, and anything like so much beyond what wearable conventional fashion generally is. Yeah, and so that's where I really decided. I think costume is much more my lane than fashion, really.
Is there any, so aside from those bits and pieces, is there any particular reason that like for do you specifically do like just theatre costume, or is it very much like do you do other bits for like shoots and stuff like that as well? Like what sort of like your range with that sort of style?
I did, well, during university. I did some more kind of editorial work as well, because, well, I went to a kind of fashion school. I went to London College of Fashion, but there is the performance department within it, which does specifically kind of theatre and film focused work. So it was an interesting positionality, because we had all of these fashion kind of art directing persons who we were kind of around. And I did do some editorial work with them, which was a really interesting line, because a lot of them are towing this line, especially now with fashion. Is like, well, ever since McQueen, really, there's been this kind of lane of design visual that is really not fashion, because it's really not wearable, but it's not costume in the traditional sense either. So I did some of that. Mostly doing kind of theatre at the minute. Well, I work with OperaUpClose, obviously, and um, also working. I'm working as a dresser in opera at the moment, and then I'm working in ballet a fair bit as well. But yeah, it's really, stage is kind of the thing that I'm most interested in. I've done a couple short films, um, which are fun as well to do, but it's a very different way of working, and often different. It's a different approach to it completely, because in film you're so much more focused and concerned with character, which obviously you are on stage as well. But I think on stage you generally have much more liberty to play with concepts and sort of bigger ideas, when film you want to be able to relate to the characters and have that level of detail. Um,
No, definitely. No, I 100% agree with that. I think it's just I feel like you can definitely be way more on the visual side. And I mean, seeing your pieces anyway, it is just like the visuals are just insane. Like they're so cool. And I think no, 100% you can definitely play around with like the shapes and colors and more. I mean, that really suits your vibe as well. So I mean, like I completely understand that. I know you said before as well, like that you like used to draw and stuff as well. Is that still something that you sort of do like in your spare time or anything like that? I know like for me I'm very much like I draw and stuff, but it's just actually having the time to do it outside of work and stuff. It's the capacity of
mm.
actually sitting down and be like, I should draw something or I should paint something. Like, is that still something that you sort of have interest in outside of work and bits and pieces?
It is. It is really. It's quite an essential question, I think, that when you kind of, especially when you turn a hobby into a job, it kind of stops being your hobby, um, and it gets tied to something that you approach with much more kind of discipline, in my experience,
Yeah.
and much more of a pressure as well to do it well and to sort of get places where you can financially as well manage with it. So yeah, I don't really draw a lot anymore. I did recently. Well, my friends recently moved, and I said, because they've got a huge sort of chimney breast, and I said I'm going to paint them a family portrait for that chimney breast, which I think I would really really like to do. But then yeah, I'm not sure
It's
when
just
that's going to
finding
happen.
the actual, I feel like it's motivation as well. I always find that like when I'm painting and stuff, it's if I don't have the motivation to do it, because I could literally just sit there and paint for like 5 to 10 hours. But if I don't have the motivation to do it, I just become really like self sort of like critical of it, and I'm just very like, oh, this looks bad, and I end up just going, oh, I'm gonna leave it for now and come back at it with a fresh eye and maybe see it later, and then I'm like, oh, what did I do? Why did I do that? That looks really strange. But yeah, no, I was just gonna go on to saying, so what sort of first steps, I know like you're very much starting off in your career and it's super exciting and stuff, what sort of first steps have you taken in your career? What was the sort of first milestone, do you think, where you thought, whether that was your voluntary work or like actual role that you got or whatever, what sort of thing was the first steps in your career that you thought, oh, this is like the beginning sort of thing?
I don't really know. I feel like I started that volunteering year with sort of so much confidence and so much happiness to be out of education, and I still think it's so important to be outside of education before you kind of go into whatever it is that you go into. There are so many people who go straight from school to university, and if you're so clear on what you want to do, then good for you. But just being outside of those institutions, I think, was so valuable for me. And yeah, especially being there, I think I was just I was super confident. I was super happy to just try whatever and start something new. And I think that that worked out really well because the job required quite a lot of initiative, and yeah, so I got a lot of really good feedback, and it really helped solidify this sort of sense of self, I think, and feeling like this is something I can do because I'm good at it, because I've got certain skills, and I've got the sort of predisposition of being kind of a forward, yeah, person who sort of starts things and takes responsibility.
No, I think it's kind of an unspoken thing. I think it's so good that you did this voluntary work, because I mean, I think it's kind of a thing that not a lot of people talk about enough, with the fact, especially with like the creative arts and stuff like that, when you're going to education in your school and university and stuff, they kind of, it's very I've found with a lot of places of people I've spoken to in the past and stuff, that they kind of don't prepare you for the fact that you literally have to start from the bottom, from the
Mm.
very, very, and like it's very much, a lot of people think I'm going to go to university, I'm going to get a degree, you know, like and then I'm going to be able to land like a stable job afterwards. It usually is like so varied. It's like it's more unlikely than likely that you land like a really, really good sort of like well-paying role as soon as you like leave education, because you need that experience behind it. And I feel like
Mm.
not a lot of people sort of think about that, because it's not really spoken about, because obviously it's all just prep exams sort of thing, and like, and then before you know it, you're like, oh, it's done, like what do I do
Mm.
now, how do I like now get into the industry? And it's like a lot of people I've seen before like find it quite difficult with the concept of sort of, I literally have to start from the bottom. And like
Mm.
whether that is voluntary or whether that is, you know, being, if you're working on like sets and stuff, being literally like a runner and stuff like that, like it
Mm.
is just like, you know, it's you got to work for it, you got to show that the sort of dedication behind it. And I think it's like really, really good that you did that voluntary work as well. I think
Mm.
it really shows how dedicated you are like
Yeah.
to your work and bits and pieces.
Definitely, and I think well, what's good about doing kind of an arts degree is that really you are building your portfolio while
Mm.
you're there, and your portfolio is what at the end of your degree will kind of get you anywhere.
Mm.
And so it is sort of good that that's entwined into the course itself. But you're so right; you have to sort of understand that just doing a degree kind of doesn't cut it. I don't know if it's anymore. I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know. I've only graduated a couple of years ago. I don't know how things were in kind of this industry 20, 30 years ago. But I do sort of feel like maybe things were different, that if you were able to do a degree, because education obviously also was a lot more accessible for people. Now it's become so expensive, and it's become a huge privilege to live in London, for example, like I do,
Mm.
and to still be able to go to university and afford to live.
Mm.
It's you have to put in a lot of yourself, and a lot more than just to go to university, unfortunately. And that's what I do recommend also to. I've recently been working with some students from the course that I did as well, some current students,
Mm.
and I've been sort of recommending to them as well to try and get as much work experience while they're at university as they can, because
Mm.
most of them will have a maintenance loan, or they'll have some sort of other stable situation where they don't necessarily depend on
Mhm.
the income from work.
Mhm.
And as soon as you graduate, that disappears, and
Mm.
then you have to have some sort of income to live.
Yeah.
And then you're not necessarily going to be able to do unpaid work anymore, which is what most of the very bottom line work is, which also it shouldn't really be, but it is.
Mm.
So yeah,
No.
do as much as you can, without, obviously, without exhausting yourself to a point where you're going to be burnt out by 25. That's no
No.
good either.
I mean, it's very much. I mean, I was talking about this with the last girl actually, where it's very much. It's kind of, there's a big stigma in, I think, that is quite common with people, especially going to university. I mean, I fell for it as well, because it's very much. I mean, I did my A levels, I did fine art and that sort of bits and pieces. Um, but it's the very fact of, oh my god, university is so expensive and I'm going into creative arts. Like it's the whole thing of yeah. It was the whole thing of, I mean, we were speaking because the last girl Lillian I was just speaking to, I mean, she told me she did history at like university, and I'm like, you're like an assistant, you're like a director now, like that's so crazy. But it's very much like we both did the same thing, where it's very much, I mean, I chose to not go to uni because I was like, I could either look for work and I could start from the bottom now, or I could spend so much money going to uni, spend so much time. Obviously, I built up a bit of a portfolio anyway when I was in college, but that's still like A level sort of bits and pieces. But it's very much like, I could go to uni, I could build a portfolio, or I could do that in my free time without spending about 9 grand.
Hmm.
It's just very much it. Like I feel like, and it's very common as well, where like people university and education is a luxury nowadays, and a lot
Hmm.
of it's kind of not really spoken about enough. The fact that it's like education in general, especially university level, is very much a luxury for the fact that a lot of creative degrees and stuff like that as well, you kind of end up with this degree, and aside from like the portfolio and bits and pieces and the beautiful work you make along the way, it's very much you're at the end and you're like, well, now I have to do what I could have done without this degree. Now, like,
Mm.
it kind of doesn't really, it to some people anyway, I found it doesn't, they kind of come out and they've been, this degree doesn't mean anything, because it's very much
Mm.
like, it's sort of, this isn't me like hating against the creative universities at all. I mean, I think like the programs are so great, and I know some people who have absolutely enjoyed their time and had a great time and been very much like it was so worth it. I just think personally for me it's very much I I would be in uni at the moment, and I feel like if I hadn't got this opportunity that I'm in at the moment as well, it's very much like I don't know if I would have if I
Hmm.
went to university and stuff. So I mean it's just yeah, it's a whole thing. University.
Absolutely. I love your point about it being a luxury, and I think it's big, especially it's a luxury because it's a business. In the UK, education is a business,
Mm-hmm.
and that I think is fundamentally so wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know, instead of taxing the rich, what we're doing is we're charging students horrendous amount, getting 20-year-olds into like thousands of pounds of debt. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't, you know, I just think that as an idea is just so
It's
ridiculous.
awesome.
And I mean, yeah, I think I had a really good time, and I think university for me was really important to have that framework as well. I do want to stress this. I think for a lot of people, as you said, yeah, you do sort of afterwards feel like, oh, no, I'm going to do all the things that I couldn't do or that I would have done or I still need to do. But then I think a lot of people still wouldn't do
Mm-hmm.
those things, especially with kind of project-led work. I think to have the framework of a university that's somewhat curated, that holds you accountable to deadlines to produce certain
Mm-hmm.
works, I think that is still really, really valuable, because you
Mm-hmm.
do end up with a somewhat kind of comprehensive body of work, at least in my case, with the kind
Mm-hmm.
of a costume degree, that is really valuable.
No, I do agree with you there, like 100%. I think it's so important for development as well in your professional selves. I think it's very much like, I mean, don't get me wrong, when I was in A levels, a lot of specifically just fine art for me, I was like, well, a lot of this stuff I could just do at home, but also I experimented with different medias and stuff that I never thought I would before, and it made me push to my aspect of I never thought of doing this before, and like now that I've done it I'm like, whoa, this is incredible, and I've created this amazing piece I never would have created without that level of education, without sort of like pushing my boundaries and being told you need to do this sort of thing. So I think it is like super duper important for people, especially who sort of don't have as much of a range in sort of different creative aspects, and sort of just stick with what they know. It's so good to sort of experiment with different things and sort of like figure out, oh wait, I'm actually really really good at, for example, like charcoal and stuff like that, and I never thought to like use
Mm,
that sort of stuff in the past before.
definitely.
So I'm just going to go on to say as well, what sort of things do you think personally, and I'm talking about like costumes and stuff like that, what sort of pieces have you been specifically proud of in a way that's like you've looked at it and you thought like I can't believe I've made this is so amazing sort
Mm.
of thing.
I mean, I think what's funny is that sometimes with costumes I make while I'm kind of in it,
Mm-hmm.
either I hate what I'm doing, or I'm kind of you just kind of know what it is and you tolerate it and you don't give a second thought to it,
Mm-hmm.
and then sort of give a few months after finishing, after not having looked at it and not thought about it, and you look back and you go, "Oh my god, I really did make that! Like, how did I do that?" There is for my degree project, I made this bodysuit.
Mm-hmm.
That was a close-fitting bodysuit made of non-stretch wool, like
Mm-hmm.
a wool felt, and I made it in, I think it was something like 38 panels. They were all asymmetrical. They were all like sort of abstract shapes across the body. It was all bias cut. I had dyed them all different colors,
Oh
so
my
they
god.
kind of came to be this sort of like abstract shape and
Mm.
pattern. And that was an insane piece, and I'm really proud of that because I think it pushed my pattern making skills to a whole new kind of level. Um, yeah, and then there are things like I'm thinking about um, this costume I made for a short film which hasn't come out yet, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a fantasy kind of dream scene, like dream sequence, where basically these two characters they get transported into this natural realm um, that has a sort of artificiality of like 1950s and 40s Hollywood musicals.
Mm.
That was something I was really looking into a lot for that film as reference points because it's really about dreaming away into this. Well, there's that kind of scene is about dreaming away into this fantasy land and aiming or wishing to be rescued. And yeah, I made this sort of corset top dress
Mm.
that was just really beautiful. And a lot of my work that I did in university wasn't necessarily beautiful.
Mm.
There was, to my work, there is generally an element of beauty or kind of visual focus because that's kind of the way that I work. I'm not. I will always have things that look good and look nice in a way, but oftentimes that means also maybe elegance is more of a term for it, but then that doesn't always apply necessarily either. But basically, yeah, I always have kind of a visual focus, but that costume in particular for that film was just really really beautiful. It was this kind of pink shifting like this shot taffeta, and then I had crystalled it with pink rhinestones as well, and it was just really really beautiful. And I thought that's kind of nice to have something in my portfolio that's just a beauty.
Mm. It's nice to sort of it's like you said, not specifically like elegance, but more just like it's just like I completely I can see the concept as you're like telling me it. Like you speak so like great about your work, and I love that. Um, with like the process of making like costumes and bits and pieces and stuff. I mean, whether that be for the pieces you've been most proud of or just like in general, what sort of part of the process do you sort of feel that is not your favorite part, but is the part that sort of like you appreciate the most? So whether that be the research going behind it, like the actual designing and the drawing, the creating it yourself, like what sort of pieces of the process make you feel like better about the piece in general, do you think?
That's a really interesting kind of topic to bring up because I feel like recently I've been sort of struggling a bit with appreciating what I'm doing
Mm.
and being in the moment and actually enjoying it because I feel like I've been sort of caught up a bit in just doing and next opportunity and where what can I do next and how can I further, how can I get places, and I feel like I've not lost, but I kind of haven't been so aware of actually what am I enjoying in the moment, and so it's something I've been thinking about quite a lot recently.
Mm.
Um, I think what always gets me super excited is at the beginning of a project is the conception of the idea, is to work out what is it that we're doing and how are we going to turn an idea, a story, um, whatever, a reference into a sort of piece of live theatre or whatever it is. That initial brainstorming, I think, is something I enjoy most, and then you do have to follow that through, and that sometimes can get a bit. I'm not sure. I don't want to say exhausting, but um, you do have to kind of commit, and you have to stay on it, and you can't let the exhaustion pull you down. Like, I'm doing a student theatre project at the moment, and it's getting, well, we've got opening night this Thursday. We're filming on a Monday, and it is that stage in the process where you have to be so active and so present to stay on it, and to not let the ball drop, because I sometimes get tempted to say, oh, we're almost done, it's like, just whatever, let's just finish it and then it's done. But actually, this is the very crucial point at which you can't do that. You have to keep on it, and you have to say, no, I'm not going to get lazy on the last, 3 days. The final details is what's going to make it really sort of effectful and good, successful, I guess.
I think it's really interesting that you say that as well. It's like linking back to what you were saying before, with the fact of when your hobbies and your personal interests become your work. I think the beauty with hobbies and stuff is it's enjoyable. You can pick it up when you want, and you can do it whenever you like, and it's a in some cases, especially with like creative wise, it's a relaxing thing you can do that sort of like brings you joy and stuff. But I feel like there are cases with trying to bring it into the workplace and thinking, how do I maintain this, being enjoyable? Because it's very much like the whole thing with it is the motivation, and being able to constantly have your like creative thinking cap on, and it can become like a bit exhausting sometimes, and a little bit draining, because it's very much like, or giving yourself the opportunity to, like, when you're doing a piece with your, like, it being a hobby, coming away and then looking back at it, and it's like all being in the moment at the time with work and stuff, and having to have a schedule and deadlines and stuff. I feel like it can be quite stressful sometimes.
Definitely, and I think it is important to remind yourself as well that, well, first of all, something I love to say. I recently did a project that was really, really intense. It was kind of a high profile, like, millinery job that I did with a big studio of people, and it was one thing I kept saying to people is, when I saw people get really stressed out, was, this is not open heart surgery. We're not saving children from drowning. Like, we're literally just making hats.
No,
like, it's fine.
Yeah.
So that is one thing I love to say, is like, actually, it is a huge privilege that we're even able to work in this kind of field might seem so frivolous to some people, that might seem so unnecessary, and to be able to make a living in this industry is a huge privilege, because at the end of the day, I mean, how much are we contributing to society? The significance of performance and telling stories in society is really big, I think, and having art in society. But if we're thinking about priorities, I think having, like, I don't know, getting homeless people off the street is kind of a bit more important than what we do at the end of the day. So let's not take it all so seriously. Coming from me, who I love to take myself super seriously, and love to take everything super seriously. But yeah, don't get so hung up on it, and enjoy and be happy that we're able to do this work, because there is so much fun in it, and it's so much fun in the people, working with the people, and there's so much fun in just creating as well.
It's like you said, it's very just living in the moment, being able to sit back and be like, oh, I'm able to do this, and I'm able to do this, and things I love, and like just sort of appreciating what you're able to do. And it's like, wow, like I can do this as a career, like this is so fun. Like, whereas there's people who aren't as fortunate and aren't able to go into this sort of stuff, and it is like just sitting back and being like, I'm so stressed out but right now, but I love doing this. It's so enjoyable, it's so fun, sort of thing. I know that, like, you worked with OperaUpClose with Riders to the Sea. That was super fun. We had like loads of amazing reviews for your costumes and stuff like that as well. What sort of things do you think for you, like your whole experience with Opera Up Close sort of stood out to you? What sort of things, uh, it could be stuff that you enjoyed throughout the process, stuff that we did that was well or awful, you never know. Um, what sort of bits do you think were sort of the highlights of working with Opera Up Close, do you think, for you?
I think, well, for me, it was my first really professional costume design job. So I'd done a lot of kind of independent stuff before, and I'd assisted on more professional things. But for me to be the designer on like a professional paid job was the first opportunity for me to do that, and so I think it gave me a lot of confidence to be trusted with it. To after the interview, I remember thinking, oh no, I think I did quite well, and then Ali called me the next day and said, I would like to offer you the position, and I was just, it was really affirming to feel like someone sees what I'm doing and thinks it's valuable. So I think overall that was really gratifying to be trusted with that opportunity, and then to see it through and it be well received as well. I think it's great for the ego, which we need.
Yes.
To be honest, in this industry,
Always
we
needed.
need things that kind of push our egos a bit sometimes. Um, and then in more of a practical sense, I think it was fantastic working with Flora, because she is such a great communicator, and as a designer, that is the most important thing, is to understand what your director wants, because sometimes they don't know what they want, or they're too occupied with other things, and you find yourself in a situation where you're having to suggest kind of random stuff, and which can be really good. But then, yeah, I mean, I had a lot of freedom on Riders, to be honest. Flora did leave me a lot of artistic freedom, and it really felt like a great collaboration, because she was very interested to hear what I had to bring to the table in terms of just understanding of the story, because that's what it comes down to. Costume design is not. I'm not like a seamstress who, no shade to seamstresses, but I'm not someone who just sits somewhere and will make you whatever. You know, I come to a production with an understanding of what are the people who were kind of drawing up in this performance, and why are they doing what they're doing, and what are their motivations, what are their fears, what are their feelings, and what does that mean to the overall story? What kind of story are we telling, and why are we telling it? Who are we trying to reach? And all those kinds of things. Those are all questions that costume designers have, that I think not necessarily everyone is aware that we are really involved in the whole process of it. And I think Flora really understood that, and she really embraced that, and that was a great experience to be working with the director, who was so keen on the collaborative process of it as well.
No, I think it's so important that it's so great that Flora's like that. She's like that with a lot of projects, which is just so great. I mean, she's very much a person who is sort of so open to ideas and so open to different things, and so open to the thought of, well, we've worked with this many people, but it's also this many people's ideas as well. It's not just like they've just done everything that I've asked them to do, like they've had input and stuff like that. And I think, just like you said before, like it's so important with the fact that you do a lot more behind the scenes than I think a lot of people realise, with the thought of like you really have to understand the characters and like understand their personalities, their traits, the stuff they've been through, even with just day to day where for like movie sets and stuff like that. You really have to understand the person's character to what they're gonna wear and how they like present themselves in real life to make it more realistic. And I feel like as well with the abstract art that you do, and like with the contemporary visions that you do that are just so beautiful, I think that is a lot more harder, to the extent where you really, really do have to sort of put yourself in the shoes of the people who you are designing for, and sort of imagine how to create sort of their minds and the vision of the art through fabric. And I think that's just so interesting and just so hard to do. I feel like there's not a lot of people that sort of realize how much thought goes into these sort of beautiful like contemporary pieces and stuff.
Yeah, I love what you just said there about putting someone's mind into their fabric, because that's really the kind of work that I do and that I love to do, is where it's much more about bringing the kind of symbols to a costume, and bringing bigger contexts and concepts out, rather than just quote unquote illustrating a character. Which there's a place for that kind of work where it's really about getting so deep into a character, and describing them and really depicting a specific reality that happens in film and in TV a lot, and in a lot of contemporary theatre in the UK as well. A lot of it is about people's realities in this present world that we are living in, and it's important, and it's obviously got an audience, and it's got a place to exist. It's not necessarily the work that I love doing the most, which is I think also why I love working in opera, because there is the space to work on a much more abstract level, and to work with bigger ideas, because you don't necessarily have the time to understand a character so well and in such great detail, because you don't hear them speak so much, and you can't necessarily relate to them in the same way as you can in like contemporary spoken theatre or in film. In opera, you have to kind of take what you're seeing in a much more, you have to read it rather than just listen to it.
It's going off
If that makes sense.
emotion, yeah, like actual emotion, facial expressions, body language, like that.
Yeah.
It's just so interesting, and I think with opera as well, like you said before, it's very like where opera is a lot more bigger and bolder and extravagant and stuff like that, especially with the sort of pieces that you love to design and the pieces that you do. I feel like that like mixes so well with opera and everything that opera's about, just being so over the top and being so, you know, out there, and so just like creative and so weird and wonderful. I just think
Yeah, I think
it's so
so.
great. Well, this has been like so great talking to you, and I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. You've really like put my mind to perspective with. I think it's all things that you sort of know and you can gauge, but it's like not really too thought about. And I think it's like this whole conversation has been so interesting about the little parts of costume design and stuff like that, that a lot of people don't really like consider when like first taking it into like accountability and stuff. To sort of wrap this all up, what do you think that you would recommend to people starting off in their careers who want to go into costume design? What sort of thing would you recommend from personal experiences and stuff?
I mean, I am still very much at the beginning of my career, I feel. So I'm not so sure I'm in the place to give much advice, but I'll happily give it anyways, because I love giving advice and then turning back on myself and going, actually, that was the wrong advice. No, I think it is important to what is important to understand is what we were talking about earlier. One point about you are turning your hobby into a job, and that comes with different responsibility and a change of kind of positionality of that practice in your life. So yeah, don't let it kind of take away from having fun. And also, it's really all about building a portfolio. It doesn't like whatever grades you get don't matter, and however you get to having the skills that you need, there is no one way. You don't have to go to university to be a fantastic designer or a supervisor or a maker. There's no one way to do something. However you can get the skills that you need is great, because you at the end of the day you will find some sort of way. And to find out what skills it is that you need, I think do as much work experience as you can, which obviously, yeah, you do need to be in the kind of financial position to be that. So that is kind of a tricky thing when you're not. But even if it's helping out on like a show doing dressing like a day a week or 2 days a week or something, try and do the unpaid jobs, because they'll be also the most non-committal. You know, if you're doing an unpaid job and you do it badly, then like, so what? You
Yeah.
just leave. You know.
No one will know.
So
It's fine.
so that's fine, and then you'll know. Then you have more experience after that and more kind of skills. So yeah, just do whatever.
No, thank you so much for coming on today. That's like really, really great. And this has been a gorgeous conversation that I will cherish. Thank you very
Oh, it's been fun. Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's fine. Thank you so much. Okay, okay.
Indulge